Good evening, everybody. Football is back. Norwich City are back after the international break, and they've responded to that first defeat of the season against Rotherham with a victory here at Carrow Road, 1-0 against a Stoke side that David Wagner described as their biggest test post Southampton, really, in his pre-match press conference. And so it proved, actually, in the second half, a really contrasting game of football. Different tests that Norwich City had to face in the first half compared to the second half, and probably dealt with those tests in different kind of ways. But 1-0 win. It's the third successive home win, which is a brilliant way to start the season, but also is the it's the best way that they've started the home season since 2006-07, when they was the last time they had a 100% record after 3 home matches. And given, I think, the importance, yes, of last season and how it transpired, but also the home form here last year wasn't good enough, wasn't anywhere near the levels that anyone would want it to be. The fact they've been able to start with 3 victories, which have been quite different. I'd say that the first 2 were deserved. I think today maybe slightly less so, but particularly the first half performance was very encouraging, and it's, as I said, an important step to make, because I made this point before the game, but if they'd have dropped points here today, or they wouldn't have gone in the way that maybe it would have been hoped, I think there might have been some jitters, and the narrative might be around that good start and questions about whether bubbles have burst and whatnot, and hopefully those can kind of be kept at bay a little bit now. Jack Stacey with the goal, his first goal in 3.5 years, on the cusp of half-time. Really good finish, poacher's finish. Just popped up at the back post after John Rowe kept a Christian Fashnak cross from the right alive. Jack Stacey then kind of hit it into the ground. It bounced up over Mark Travers and into the back of the net to score the only goal. And from there, it was a really interesting contest. But let's start with the first half, because I thought basically what we saw from Stoke today was, in the first half, how not to play against Norwich, and in the second half, how to play against Norwich. And it was quite a similar template to what Rotherham used in that second period. But the first half, they played in quite a low block. They weren't keen to be provoked by the pressing situations that Norwich City were trying to get out of them. And Norwich were able to create a lot of joy, particularly in wide areas. They had so much joy down this right-hand side through Fashnak, who is so good at coming centrally and drifting fullbacks with him, and that kind of opens up the channel for Jack Stacey. And they were so dominant. John Rowe looked lively. They were getting their front 2 involved in the game. Gabriel Sara seemed to open them up at will, and it was a really, really dominant, controlling display for Norwich. Maybe the criticism is that they didn't convert that good territory and good possession into really, really good chances and capable chances, but they got their nose ahead, and it was deserved. So at that point, really, it kind of looked like there was only ever going to be one winner. In the second half, we saw that shift and change a little bit more, in the sense that Stoke went after Norwich a bit more. They played with a bit more intensity, with a higher block. They engaged players higher up the pitch. Again, very similar to what Rotherham did, and had a lot of joy doing that. And it kind of forced Norwich in the end, when Hwang was on the pitch, to go a little longer. And because the distances between their lines, because they had kind of 2 banks of 4 in a fairly low block, and then Hwang and Barnes up front, just made it quite difficult for them to keep the ball to stick, basically, to make the ball stick and get others into play. So it allowed Stoke probably a little bit more territory and feel into the game, and that was a tweak that Alex Neil made at half-time that probably meant that they could have left here with a point today, and had Dwight Gale have taken an opportunity near the end, they may well would have. Norwich made life difficult for themselves. I think that's fair to say. They didn't respond to the problems that Stoke kind of set them, and the questions they asked them in the second half. But also, you have to reflect on both. They were so utterly dominant in the first half, really impressive. The second half, less so, and that's kind of where we're at. So you piece that together, and it's probably, and I said this after Rotherham, it'd be really interesting to see if teams took the template that Rotherham used, engaging high, pressing high, but also engaging in a pretty high mid to high block against them in possession, and kind of trying to, particularly without Sargent, trying to get Norwich to play through that, and Stoke kind of did it very well, because it forced Norwich a little bit longer than they wanted to be. But the first half is a great example of how not to play against Norwich for me, and we've seen teams do it. Huddersfield did it, went for man, played in a low block and got annihilated, really. That's Norwich's preference in those type of situations. So I'm just keen to see now whether this kind of engagement higher up the pitch, this willingness to pen Norwich City in, if this becomes a theme, I think Norwich City might have some more difficult afternoons ahead of them. That's not to say they can't rise to those challenges, but I think it's an interesting trend to keep an eye on. But that first half was very good, and one thing's for sure, we know in the Championship you get a real range of styles and teams doing different things, and Stoke kind of did a different thing in the first half to second, and actually their use of the ball wasn't particularly great. And for as much as I speak about their improvement in the second half, there wasn't really any moments that forced Angus Gunn into what you would describe as a really serious save. I would suggest certainly nothing on the top of my head, and David Wagner was a little bit frustrated with how they managed the game as well, and I'm with him. They had a couple of opportunities where they had overloads or kind of half chance opportunities really, and Hwang had one and Springett had one, Hernandez had one as well. 3 moments where they could have taken the ball to the corner, tried to wind the clock down a little bit and just managed the game a little bit better. I didn't necessarily feel they did that in the best way. Norwich moved to a 4-5-1 late on to try and control that middle of the pitch a little bit more. I didn't necessarily think it gave them the control that they wanted. It made Hwang very isolated. It made the ball more difficult to stick than it already was. But ultimately they were able to see it out, and clean sheets is a good thing to have. And I always say, and I've always said on these verdicts, good teams win when they're not necessarily at their best. Norwich weren't necessarily at their best in that second half, but they managed to see it through in part because of Stoke's poor play and ineffectiveness from an attacking situations. I thought Alex Neil left it a little bit too late to get Daniel Johnson and the lad on the far side on, who were a little bit more technical and looked like they could unlock something. Just left it a little bit too late for me, and that obviously worked to Norwich's credit. The only real scare came late on when Dwight Gale had an opportunity from about 6 yards out. It was just a complete air shot really at the ball, and Norwich got away with one. And from that, I think the ball got recycled. Lawrence heads it, Gunn claims it, full-time whistle, go. So that's an indication of kind of the dynamic of the game and how it flowed. But look, ultimately, as I said right at the start, for narrative reasons, for the purposes of proving they're capable of responding to adversity, which is, this is the type of game they wouldn't have seen through and they wouldn't have won last season. So I think it is in many ways a sign of their growth. And equally, as poor as the second half were, we can talk about how good the first half was, which is good. But I just want to see a bit more evidence that Norwich are capable of standing up to teams who are going to engage them higher up the pitch, because if they continue to struggle with that, teams are going to come here and they're going to put it on them when they go away as well, and we're going to see teams do it a lot more. So they're going to have to learn to answer those questions, and that's just one for me, just one minor point that I think we need to keep an eye on moving forward, and also that game management aspect, the fact it wasn't quite where it needed to be. I was a little bit surprised we didn't see Adam Forshaw in those closing stages just to add a little bit of calm to proceedings, but they clearly wanted Liam Gibbs' energy to try and get up to Hwang and bridge that gap a little bit. So I can understand it from a technical point, but I just think the game was requiring Norwich to wrestle back a little bit of control. So there we go. But look, it's a win. As I said, it's their third win from 3, 100% record at home, a brilliant response to their first defeat of the season, and a really interesting period for them. Let's look at some individuals then. Jack Stacey scored the winning goal. It's his first goal for 3.5 years. There's a lovely anecdote that he's told us after the game, that his mum was actually in the director's box today. Stacey's mum, I know, make your own jokes, etc. She was sat next to Delia. She got the invite in the week. Norwich kind of rotate which families get to come and watch the game in the director's box. So on this occasion, it happened to be Jack Stacey's, and his mum has been able to watch him score his first goal in 3.5 years. And I think more so I want to talk about that dynamic down the right with Christian Fashnak, because those two are developing such a nice partnership and an understanding. And Christian Fashnak in particular, I mean, you look at his pedigree, someone who's played at the very highest level in the Champions League. He's won Swiss titles. He's no mug, and I think we're beginning to see quietly him grow into his skin here at Norwich City. He's quite an unassuming, quiet type of character, but so effective as a footballer. Some of the touches and combinations that he strikes and movements, just excellent. And actually in that first half, I thought both wide areas for Norwich were really good as well. And that understanding between Stacey and Fashnak is so dangerous from the offensive perspective, but almost more impressive is Fashnak's willingness to track back and his desire to protect him. And there was one moment in the first half just down here where Stacey has got a little bit caught out and Fashnak's recovered and executed a brilliant tackle. Tried to do that in the second half and got a yellow card. But Fashnak very quietly, and Stacey actually, for the system that Norwich City want to play, looking like very, very good recruits and very positive recruits, and recruits capable of impacting this Norwich City team positively as well. I think we're seeing them both flourish and grow. And what Jack Stacey is so good at is getting up and down, that athleticism, that energy that David Wagner demands from his fullbacks. And I think we've seen it from Dimi Yunulis. We've seen some really impressive performances from him as well. They have to show real energy and bring that energy. And in many ways, the energy that Norwich City want to play with is kind of encapsulated by their fullbacks at times. And that does create a fair amount of risk. So you need your wingers to be active going the other way. And Christian Fashnak certainly is. And I thought he was outstanding today. And even though he wears his shorts, sort of quite baggy shorts, and rolls his socks up to his knees, it looks a little bit like a basketball player at points. Just a really elegant footballer to watch. And I've been really impressed with him so far. Kenny McLean, I thought, was excellent as well in the closing stages of the game, particularly for obviously the moment late on Stoke were attacking and he broke something up pretty wonderfully, and just really consistent. And I think that's the story of his time here. It's why he signed a new contract. It's why he's valued so highly, because of that consistency and his ability to manage situations and set standards. Shane Duffy likewise, I thought he was pretty imperious in the first half. So there were really good performances in there. I thought Hwang, when he came on, I know people will want to know about him. Again, just thought he was a little bit isolated at points. A really good kind of ability to, really good aerial presence, really good energy about him. I think we've seen flashes of what he can do. Adam Eder, likewise. I didn't necessarily feel it was a tough game for both of those players for the way that it unfolded, but some really nice hold-up playing glimpses in possession that he could do that positively. So that's good. That's good as well. Was there anyone else I wanted to mention? I feel like there probably was. But yeah, and this is a really, really good, interesting week for Norwich City. You obviously started off with this one, and then you've got a big test on Wednesday night against Leicester, who are looking like the division's best, I think, at the moment. Certainly in terms of squad and individual quality, they are that. It's going to be a really interesting test to see how well Norwich stand up to them, and how they play against them as well. And I think there will be a lot of people curious, and to me it feels a little bit of a test to see just how far off Norwich are from maybe the very top of, in this division, the way they're playing at the moment. Because, and anyone who watched the interview with Narcis Palash in the week will know, Norwich want to be this well-rounded side who are capable of standing up to problems, solving problems, but also being quite adept in all aspects of the game. And I feel like they're going to have to lean on all of that on Wednesday night. And then Plymouth as well. This is a really hectic period. It's kind of ultra championship. It's 7 games in 21 days. So moving into the October international break, we're going to get a really clear picture of where Norwich City are. But look, it's what, 6 wins from 8, I think, to start the season in all competitions. That's pretty good going. And certainly, I think in the wildest dreams of most people around this place at the start of this season, when expectations were so low, and it's still early days and there's still work to do. And I think this game has highlighted, and Rotherham as well, in pretty stark fashion, just how much improvement there is to come from this group. This was probably Norwich City's poorest performance of the season. They've come away with a win. So home performance, of the season. They've come away with a win, so that's a positive. And obviously they've kept a clean sheet as well, and defensively have looked pretty okay. I think pretty okay is a nice technical term they used by me, but you'll know what I mean. They I think Stoke probed at points, but as I said, I can't really recall Angus Gunn having to make a really, really good save. So that's a plus for Norwich City's back defensive players, I guess, and that clean sheet shows that as well. I did want to speak a little bit more about Adam Eder. I kind of brushed over him, and I don't want to brush over him. Obviously, he started again here today, got replaced on 60 minutes. It's a really tough gig for him, I think, because of the way that Norwich want to play, but also the way this game unfolded made it quite a tough gig for him. I've made this point before. I think that hold-up play, there's kind of a technical issue. He goes in quite straight. I think they just needs a bit more. Basically, needs to stick his backside out a little bit more and create a stronger foundation, a little bit in the way Ashley Barnes did. But in the same token, I thought there was some really nice play outside of the box. There was one, probably his best chance of the game came. Duffy teed him up in the first half and just kind of snatched at it a little bit, I thought, and it was claimed relatively easily by Travers. So there we go. We'll be back here on Wednesday night for Leicester. That's a pulsating game, a really intriguing contest that one's going to be. Plenty more at pinkin.com as well. David Wagner reaction is being worked up as we speak. Jack Stacey will be there in the morning as well. We're going to record a podcast. That will be on our YouTube channel. There'll be loads more for you to get your teeth stuck into. From Carrow Road, that's a nice sunny Carrow Road, and actually just on that pitch behind me, where they're now mowing, Borja Sainz has been out there doing a training session. So along with a host of other Norwich City players who were/weren't involved today. So that's a good sign as well. From Carrow Road, a beautifully sunny Carrow Road, we're signing off. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. See you soon.